Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Speaker Stories. We're back after a summer break, and we hope your summer was as great as ours was. And we're really excited because we're getting back into our luncheon lecture series. Today, with me on Speaker Stories is Francis Rengers. Francis is a geologist at the USGS in the Landslide Hazard Group. Francis is also our September 30th speaker. That is our first luncheon, as I said, after the break, and it'll be held downtown at the Wynkoop Brewing Company. You can join us in person. You can join us via Zoom from the Rockies or anywhere in the world, really. But you got to register. So go to rmssepm.org and you can find out all the information on how to register. But yeah, just so happy to have you here today, Francis. Thanks for being here. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great. Just jump right into it. Tell us a little bit about where you're from.
Sure. I grew up in West Virginia, but I've been in Colorado for almost 20 years now. And I've been working mostly in kind of the natural hazard space for the past decade or so, primarily on wildfire areas.
Okay, interesting. So, how did you get into the hazard side? That's yeah, the how'd you get here?
Yeah, as a geologist, looking around at all the fires we were having, I started to be really curious. I thought this is, a really important natural hazard, but um, I was kind of interested to learn the geologic angle, which is, fires kind of reset your soil and hydrologic factors. And so there is a lot of erosion and sedimentation that happens after fires. So I was able to study that for my PhD, and then I started working at the USGS, where we have a whole group that's dedicated to post-fire debris flows here in Golden, Colorado.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I guess maybe it's my ignorance, but I'm not sure. How big of a research team do you work with at the USGS that's working on kind of hazards and things like that?
Yeah, let's see. So Landslide Hazard Program, which is where we're housed, is about 40 people. It's in that neighborhood.
Wow.
And the specific set of folks that work on post-fire debris flows, there's about five or six of us that work full time here in Golden on that.
Oh, okay. That's a pretty big team. Cool. Kind of jumped ahead a little bit, but let's take a step back. So how did you get into the geosciences and decide that you wanted to go that direction?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I really liked science stuff, and I really like being outside. And so that it kind of narrowed it down to me to either maybe like forestry or geosciences. I'd done an internship in a microbiology lab one summer, and after 8 hours a day of pipetting, I realized in a room that had no windows, I realized that that was not my strength. Was like being a lab guy. So yeah, I thought, oh, this is great. Yeah, geology is something that where you're thinking about the earth and thinking about stuff outside, and even when you're not outside you're thinking about it. So yeah, it felt like a pretty good fit for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, that first camp out trip that you have in early undergrad is like that's kind of a it's kind of an aha moment for for getting into geoscience. So that's a great recruiting tool. Um, and then so you went to school in West Virginia, or where did you start doing?
Went to undergraduate in West Virginia University, and then I came out to Fort Collins, to Colorado State University. Did a master's degree in fluvial geomorphology.
Okay.
From there, I worked for about 9 months at the Colorado Water Conservation Board, which was really neat to learn about how the state does water. And then I went into environmental consulting, worked at a engineering environmental consulting firm
Okay.
uh, for about 4 years, and then jump back into a PhD at University of Colorado in Boulder.
Okay. So what was it like that kind of getting back into a PhD after, what, almost 5 years it sounds like, being away from academics? Was that was how did you handle that?
Yeah, that was interesting. It actually went much better than I expected. To be perfectly honest, when I first started working, um, and I realized I had to sit down for 8 hours a day, it took a little bit to develop the endurance to do that successfully. But the thing I liked about working in consulting is that it really helped me get good at figuring out the important part of a problem quickly. Because, when clients are asking, hey, can you solve this problem? They want you to weed through the details and get to the nugget quickly. And then it was also kind of nice having some time in that space because outside of school you realize that there's no answer key. There's no there's no book that has the right answer, and so you have to figure out how to prove to yourself that you're right and how to defend your observations and the calculations you're making. And that was a really nice skill to have jumping back in the PhD, because then I could, yeah, use that to kind of go, okay, do I think I'm on the right track? Yeah, so it was good.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It almost kind of refined your skills to be away from it and also made it maybe a little bit more like kind of absence makes it fonder to be back in school and be researching. So that's interesting. Cool. And what did you work on for your PhD?
Yeah, so I started looking at erosion after wildfires. So I worked on a fire, um, the 4 Mile Canyon fire, that was just west of Boulder. So I used terrestrial lidar scanning to track changes in erosion between rain events there,
Hmm.
and then tied that to some modeling. I worked on gully erosion, which is not something that's super popular in the United States, although it's actually a little bit more popular globally, because gullies are a real problem when you have a really fast incision of a channel, this kind of ripping up through infrastructure and things that you care about. Um, it's a big deal. So um, the kind of theme that tied that stuff together was gullies and wildfire erosion are both these like highly erosive environments, and they're transient. So you have a system that's adjusting rapidly. It's not in steady state. Um,
Hmm.
and so yeah, it was a really good introduction to what I do now on debris flows, which are these transient features that are triggered by, hydrology and um, yeah, so I was able to do a lot of field work and field instrumentation and LiDAR and modeling. It still skill sets I use every day here.
Yeah, that's really cool. So in a lot of your work has focused in both in your career and your research in kind of Colorado. Is that correct?
Well, I've been based in Colorado, but I've actually had the opportunity to kind of work all over the world. So I spent about 3 months in Australia. I
Oh,
worked on um, post wildfire erosion in Australia. I have collaborators right now in the Netherlands, in Portugal. Um, so I've had the opportunity to work in different places. I've done short-term field work at the USGS in New Zealand and Sri Lanka.
wow.
So I've got to see a lot of different kinds of landscapes. But right now, the current purview is Western United States.
Okay.
So my group kind of monitors what's going on in the Western US. But yeah, very happy to live here in Colorado and
Yeah, yeah.
do a lot of work here.
I mean, hazard wise, how does your work compare from, let's say, Colorado to Sri Lanka or something like that when you're looking at hazards? Is there kind of population concerns? Like what, like how do you how, I don't know what my question is really, but like I mean, just trying to get a handle on maybe some of the comparison between us and the rest of the world. Like, how do things compare?
Yeah. No, that's a really good question. Obviously, so I'm in the landslide hazards program. So the main theme in our program is landslides, and landslides look really different. So yeah, in the Western United States, post-fire debris flows are a really big deal. Um, that's not actually the case in the Eastern US so much. There have been a few documented instances of landslides several years after a fire in the East, but it's a little bit harder to directly make the connection. So yeah, depending on the environment, the climate, the geology, the kind of landslide hazards we care about matters a lot. But I would say, in recent years, the big theme that I work on in fire, unfortunately, it has become kind of a growth industry. So we're seeing fires in places that haven't burned in super frequently in many years. We're seeing a lot more fires in Oregon, Washington, in Canada, British Columbia,
Yep.
places that typically have a recurrence interval that's more like on the every 100-year cycle historically. And it's looking like they're starting to burn a little bit more frequently.
Hmm.
So,
Interesting.
yeah, that fire landscape is expanding.
Okay. Yeah, and when you kind of like think back in the last, I'd say like 15 years here in the Front Range, you've had obviously multiple wildfires. Yeah, you see them every summer, every year. But then, events like the rainfall in 2013, like in but I mean, like, yeah, it just seems like you've kind of got a perfect storm to, yeah, pardon the pun, but of things coming together with. Is that a proper assessment of that? Or is that kind of what you're seeing, or?
You know, and I went to a conference in 2010, and I was talking with a bunch of foresters who were around, kind of some old timers, and they said, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, even into the 90s, people called Colorado forests asbestos forests because they meant they couldn't burn. They just said, yeah, here in Colorado, like fire's just not a big issue. But
Interesting.
for a lot of people that have lived for the past, 25 years in Colorado, they wouldn't say that at all. They'd say, "Oh man, we see
Yeah.
fires mostly every summer." 2020 we had three different fires that were all larger than the largest known historic fire in the state.
Yeah.
So clearly things are changing in that domain. So um, yeah, it's kind of it's a little bit of a moving target.
Yeah.
The 2013 storm was really historic, and we know that kind of stuff. We always have, low probability events. There's always a chance of a low probability event
Yeah.
happening, but on the fire side of things, it does seem like that's becoming a lot more common here in Colorado.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, we got in the weeds a little bit there, but yeah, maybe we'll take a step back and what do you think about kind of looking back through, whether it's through your studies or through your career outside of university, um, what do you think about what makes a good mentor? I always ask this question and I don't feel like I ever really hit it right, but I always try and get at like, what can we do to be better mentors for geoscientists of the future? Because I think it's really important and yeah, just with it seems like it's harder and harder to get a geoscience job out there. Like how do we help the future and how do we preserve geosciences for the future and make sure that it's still a vibrant industry for people to do after college? That's
That's
loaded.
a great question. Yeah, I think I have a big picture answer and a small kind of anecdote answer.
Okay.
So my big picture answer that I've thought a decent amount about is, you know, when I watch, my friends and colleagues that get an engineering degree, there's such a good infrastructure for moving from the educational world into um, a thriving consulting um, business. People can start their own or do, or join existing businesses because the engineering world has just done such a great job of creating kind of known problems to solve, things that we all care about, and creating licensure and uh, like a culture around that. And I feel like geoscientists, I wish we could have a little bit more of that structure and also like entrepreneurialism
Hmm.
injected because I
Okay.
think the skill sets are pretty different than traditional engineering. I don't think the solution is, oh, we'll just become an engineer because it's really different. The skills and the problems we're trying to solve as geoscientists. But I think that modeling our field a little bit in that direction could be really good in trying to, show younger people like, hey, here's maybe an entrepreneurial way you can like create a business with this skill set, um, or yeah, just kind of have some mentorship of like private consultants, that are helping to show folks how to make a career that's not in the just traditional extractive industries, for example.
Yeah.
Um, so that's my big picture idea. And then,
I like it. I like it. And I think like so my background is oil and gas, and I mean it seems like the bigger companies need less and less on the geoscience side, or companies in general, right? And I think they're finding out ways to do more with less. And so I think your point is valid that it's kind of up to us if we're outside of that world to hustle more, to show our entrepreneurial side and really kind of be innovative on that side. So I think that's spot on. Yeah.
yeah, mapping skills, remote sensing skills,
Mm.
understanding of, strength properties and all the things you get with a geoscience degree.
Yeah.
There's a lot of application.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah. My small anecdote is that the best advice I ever got from a mentor was I was young and started my career and my boss asked me a question I didn't know the answer to. And I was like, hang on, let me go look and see if I can figure that out. And I went and kind of pulled up one of my textbooks and started, I was reading it and came back and talked with him about it. And he said, hey, I think you're scared to say I don't know.
Hmm.
But never be ashamed to say that you don't know something. That's not an embarrassing thing to say.
Yeah.
It's absolutely okay to say I don't know. And he kind of helped to normalize that for me.
Yeah.
And that was probably the best because it just forces you to just really embrace radical honesty, about your science and what you're doing. And whenever you're really, really honest about the data, about what you're doing, I think it always takes you in the right direction.
Yeah.
So that was great mentorship moment for me.
Yeah, that's great advice. A little humility never never hurt anybody, right? Cool. Good. What keeps you fascinated about geology?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just so easy. It just, it's just, I truly think it's like the one of the most interesting science fields. I mean, everything from why why are the oceans where they are? Because oceanic rock is heavy. Like why don't you find old rocks in the ocean? Plate tectonics. I mean,
Sure.
all that like that kind of stuff. To yeah, just thinking about yeah the why do you sometimes get a flood that moves, boulders that are, you know, a meter? Why do you get a debris flow that moves things that are, house size?
Yeah.
And where do they stop? I think I think the dynamism is pretty fun for
Yeah.
me. And I'm particularly trained as a geomorphologist, and my undergraduate professor said geomorphology is the science of scenery. And so I think that everybody wants to go on a on a beautiful trip. And so when you spend your time thinking about scenery, I mean, it's pretty nice.
Yeah, yeah, that's not bad. Yeah, good, cool. So what do you have I forgot lost my train of thought here. So do you have a favorite rock, mineral, fossil outcrop somewhere? Anything that comes to mind?
Oh, that's great. Um, well, the easy one for me is I live by Red Rock, so Fountain Formation,
Yeah.
obviously love.
Yeah.
And I also live by Green Mountain in
Mm,
Lakewood. And so I love that, Green Mountain is this beautiful conglomerate, that weathers and when it breaks apart, you just have this fluvial gravel up there
yeah.
that whenever I'm with non-geologists and they're like, man, how do you think they got this nice rounded gravel up here? I love talking with them about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, certainly love those two local geological features.
Yeah, that's great. I ride my bike at Green Mountain quite often, and there's those kind of two little outcrops, or maybe it's just a fallen pieces on the west side. I take pictures of them
Yep.
every time. They're fascinating. Denver group's amazing. Cool. Good. What do you do for fun when you're not thinking about landslides?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm a big trail runner. So love trail running. I'm a really bad mountain biker.
Okay.
Um, and recently, yes, I would say paddleboarding because based on the fact that the last like 3 or 4 vacations I've gone on with my wife, we've brought our paddle boards.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's something we've kind of gotten excited about lately.
Well, it's so fun and so like the inflatable ones are so easy and portable. Like, yeah, I bring it wherever we take our kids. Like, we'll bring it, and it's also a good workout inflating those things. So
Yeah, yeah.
cool. Well,
Yep.
that's really fun. Um, and we've kind of covered this a little bit, but what can our audience expect at your September 30th talk?
Yeah, so I had the unique opportunity to work on a study with a bunch of different government agencies. So, Colorado Department of Transportation, Forest Service, the Weather Service, us here at the USGS. And we had a really hard problem. We had Glenwood Canyon, which is a vital artery to the state of Colorado, burned both sides of the canyon, the Grizzly Creek fire. And the last 2 times that part of the world has burned, um, within 2 months, there were debris flows.
Wow.
So, when it burned in August, we thought, "Oh, no, this could be bad." And we dodged a little bit of a bullet because there just wasn't the rainfall, to trigger debris flow, but we knew we weren't out of the woods. So what they can expect is for me to kind of tell the story about how we work together to kind of come up with a plan about how do we handle this. And it's not going to be a spoiler to anybody that lives in Colorado to say that there actually were some really big debris flows that came down. There were 9 storms that ended up triggering debris flows in lots of different basins, and one was so bad that it closed Interstate 70 for 2 weeks because it did so much damage. But the good news is there were no fatalities. There were no even like major injuries, and so that was what we were hoping for. So I'm going to kind of talk about the history um, of burn areas in that canyon, debris flows, and then what happened with that specific event.
Oh, cool. So science and infrastructure working together and
Yeah,
saving lives. So
yeah.
that's really cool. Good. Well, we're really excited for September 30th. As I mentioned earlier, just go to rmssepm.org. You can register there. Just make sure you do so before the end of the day on September 29th, because we'll kind of close it down on that Monday. But Francis, thank you so much for being with me today, answering the questions and kind of meandering through your background. It's very interesting, and we're really looking forward to seeing you on the 30th.
Oh, thanks so much. Looking forward to being there.
Awesome. Have a good day.
You too.